Cinema, where we focus on a film, and today I'm going to be ranking all 9 2023 comic movies from my least favorite to my favorite, and I'd love to share your talk down in the comments below about these comic book movies. What have you watched? What did you love? And what did you unfortunately not vibe with this past year? Of course, some of these movies were critical successes, but didn't always land well in the box office. But so let's just talk cinema down in comments below and get my list started at number 9, which is Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Now, I wasn't a personal fan of the first Shazam movie. The comedy didn't blend well with the drama, and so this was a bunch of the same that just wasn't my vibe. I was disappointed just for the point that it didn't change my thoughts on the first Shazam movie. It didn't change the aspects that didn't work well with me. Of course, if you really enjoyed that vibe, then good for you, but unfortunately, it just didn't land well in all the right way. The character development just went off in different directions that wasn't personally very cool for me, and the witches as the villain didn't offer a whole lot that added something that were rememberable for them, despite them being witches, because they go all about these different dynamics that just feel off-centered, very cliche to other villains we've seen in the past, and the way they go about that just doesn't end up vibing at the end of the day. But coming in at number 8, we have Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. One I did enjoy the first one for, and this one just went off in different directions that was very stale, very boring, very repetitive, somewhat, bringing back Black Manta that I felt like it had some potential what they were doing with it, but just felt like a revenge story we've seen before. And we've seen before because we've seen this character, this villain, and just extending on that, bringing back Aquaman and his brother. What they go, the adventure wasn't too thrilling for me, so oftentimes I was often bored. I felt like checking the time in the theater, but it just really didn't have a whole lot that wowed me, that had a great factor, that brought in great chemistry between these characters, and ended up feeling stale by the end of the movie, which isn't too great for a superhero movie. And coming in number 7, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and my viewership from the first watch to my rewatch was very different. I did quite enjoy it from upon the first watch. It did have some great dynamics. What they're doing was fun and had Strange World vibes, which I did enjoy the Disney movie of. But unfortunately, upon rewatch, it just didn't vibe with me. The MODOK trope, I don't think is the worst thing in the world, but didn't have a whole lot to offer. Ant-Man versus a Kang of all things felt like a very downgraded battle, because Ant-Man is like this smaller superhero versus one of the biggest superheroes supposedly that we're building up to, and it just felt like a match that shouldn't have worked as well as it did. Just Ant-Man and the Wasp and all of these ants being able to take out Kang just like that, and just the dynamics that flowed with it just didn't flow all in the right ways. Some of the acting was like, it was still good, it still had some jokes, but it wasn't grounded down in reality, in the natural humor that Peyton Reed brought into the first 2 films. And so what is normally looked at as the lighter franchise and lighter stakes to the MCU was brought to this large, massive battle, and the combination of that just didn't work at the end of the day. But coming in at number 6, we have The Marvels. Now this one, it had a little bit of fun. The character moments had good chemistry between the different characters, what they're doing with Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and other Marvel, what they're doing with that. I do enjoy them all 3 as their own, and they had a few good moments together, but the story was very boring for what I was going after. It like had those moments that made it work, that made me like it. a bit as a whole to like take it out of my realm of reality, what they're going with it, but it didn't feel like it had a whole lot of significance. It didn't have a whole lot of importance that made it memorable. And so unfortunately, especially with the villain being quite forgettable by the name and what she has done, it just turned off to be one of those MCU movies that didn't vibe with me quite as well. And coming in number 5, we have Blue Beetle. Now this one has great moments that work for the Hispanic culture, what they're doing with the focus and ideas that they're going after, but some of that was overplayed and didn't have the serious moments that I was hoping it to. And while some of it, yes, you're supposed to take it as a joke because it's a comic book movie, the way they go about it was very weird and out of balance and just didn't vibe with me in the way that I was hoping to, especially for such a great looking hero. And coming in number 4, we have The Flash. Now this one I did actually vibe with a bit more. It wasn't a great story. It wasn't something that had the best effects especially, but the story as a whole did interest me. I do enjoy the multiverse looking thing, even if it is a little overplayed. This one felt like it had a little bit different vibe to it. I love the story that they go with the Flash and having a double Flash and going into things and something that's a small stakes story, bringing into a big idea such as the multiverse, worked out in a way that I didn't expect, and I did enjoy a lot of the different moments more than I would have expected for all the reshoots and other things that were going on behind the scenes that ended up being not so bad at the end of the day based on all of those factors. And while it's not one of the best films of 2023, it was rather decent for what I was expecting. But coming in at number 3, we have The Killer. David Fincher bringing such a big surprise for this past year. I didn't have a huge expectations for this, but the simple act of this character focused study based on this one man makes a small mistake on his hitman duties and having to essentially go off and on the run throughout the film, and what he has to do to take out some of the people that were in charge and the dynamics they have with that and the sorrow and sort of loss he had for having regrets of what he did so wrong on his main duties that he's so good at normally. Brought out such a great story that flowed quite well for a Netflix film, and David Fincher was such a good director for bringing this story to life, even though I just wasn't expecting quite so much out of it as I probably should have based on David Fincher's past directing. And coming in number 2, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now while it didn't end in the amount of character losses most of us would have expected, it still brought all of the strong emotions, the great action, the great directing from James Gunn, and bringing all the character moments to an end, to the end of this trilogy. Such a great payoff for all that he has brought to the MCU, all of the great moments that made you cry and made you laugh, and the dynamics are great. And while some moments where the humor makes you think it's overplayed based on some of his relatives he puts in his film that don't feel like great cameos because you recognize them as the people he knows, it still pays off in such a grand way with such great cinematography and shots that it has also one of the best soundtracks of the year. So of course Guardians of the Galaxy has to be near the top of this list that fortunately paid off unlike many of the past ones. Coming in at number 1, we have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and when it comes to the first film of this franchise, I wasn't the biggest fan going into it. I did enjoy what we got from the first film, but this one exceeded my expectations. What they did with the Spider-Verse and what they did with all of these different Spider-Man that just makes you geek out in the theaters and even watching it at home. I just elevated my score that much more because it still works as a home viewing experience. The way they have all these different Spider-Mans, the huge chase scene, the huge momentous action that they had throughout, the animation being groundbreaking, that should have put it in the Best Picture category for the Oscars. And I just enjoy all this film's had to offer, the heart and passion, making this such an art piece on every frame, and just bringing out this great dynamic of who Spider-Man is, the consequences and the stakes that this part one of Beyond the Spider-Verse is going to bring. And I hope they bring as much time and passion into the sequel to this film as they did with this one, no matter how long it takes to get that second one. I just absolutely loved and geeked out over what this film has to bring, making me love Spider-Man that much more, making it my #1 film of the 2023 comic book movies. So that's just my ranking of all non-comic book movies from 2023, ranked from my least favorite to my favorite, and I'd love to hear you talk cinema down in the comments below, sharing your ranking just as well, and be respectful in the comments of what we connected with, because we can't always connect with movies all in the right way. And so if you enjoyed some of my least favorite picks, I'd still love to hear that and be happy for you as well. So that's just all, and do yourself a favor, go watch a movie.